Okay, here we go. So this is part 2 of the build, and these are the updates that we did to the servers. First of all, I changed the host names to the servers from, say, just NS1 to the fully qualified domain name. And that makes it really clear, especially for the servers, who they are and what their FQDN is supposed to be. The other thing that I did in the zone files is that we added a reverse lookup for the host, so we have another zone. I'll show that to you here in a second. And we have to remember that in our zone files themselves, we have timers. And a lot of the start of authority timers, right, are really about the server-to-server communication. They're not very much about the hosts. Although, if you've stored information, that's, one of them is for how long the information is good for. We did a video on that before. Okay. The other big thing is that we told the servers about each other. So now the servers know who they're allowed to exchange information with. And again, we'll do a capture on that, we'll see. But the key is that while both the servers are going to be authoritative, only one of them has the actual zone files that we're going to use. And the secondary is going to get all of the zone files or the resource records transferred to it. And then we can decide if we want to save backups on the secondaries. Okay, so we've got a couple of updates to the named.config. We've got, I did some modifications to the listen on ports. We've got additional zone definitions, and then we've got allow transfer. All right, so let's take a look at that. So let's actually go into the file. And I put these three here. We can do a variety of listen on statements, right? So this is especially handy if you've got multiple ports, things like that. Or you can just say, I'm not going to use a listen on statement at all, and then the host says, all right, well, what's my live interface? I modified my allow query line to say, well, listen, I want to be able to do stuff right here, but then if we're going to expand this, we would say, well, I'm going to have my subnet. Now this becomes much more important when you are going to do something like recursion or have a recursive let me try that again. Where you're going to have a recursive name server, because we really want to restrict all of the exchange between servers. And so this becomes really critical when you're going to say, I want to do recursion. This was a big one, allow transfer. So when we allow transfer, this is the other server that I'm going to do zone transfers with. And so this becomes a really important statement. We're not doing any recursion on this server, and we're not doing DNS here either. All right, now we know about the forward and reverse zone files, and we can see that I've got the allow transfer here. Now, it turns out that a name server can be authoritative for a lot of different domains. And so you can say either globally, I want to allow transfer with somebody, like I did above, or you can say it for individual zones or domains. And so I put both of them in here so you can say, you can sort of choose which one you want to do. But if you are really specific about, say, I've got a backup for this particular domain over here and a different backup for a different domain, that's just where you would change that. Now the file here, obviously this is where the actual zone files are located, and because the directory is already named up top here, right, this directory, you don't actually need to include the full path here, but I just like to be specific. Now the other thing that we added was the reverse zone, and I'll just show you a peek at those when we get over there. All right, so those are changes to our primary named.config, and we'll take a look at our forward zone lookup. Now, as I said, these all of these parameters right here for the start of authority, those are really about servers communicating with each other. And when we do the zone transfer, the number that we're going to check is this serial number and whether or not we have the most up-to-date information on the backup or the secondary. I've added my secondary here as another authoritative name server, and then I've updated all of these. Now the fun thing is that we'll see here in a second, client 1, I said that it was .20, and we just saw in the previous video that it actually got .25. So when we do NS lookup commands, remember that it's not really what the actual fact might be, but rather what the name server thinks is going on. So really the name server is just doing a lookup. Now the other fun thing about that is that clients don't really need an NS or a name server resource record, right? Because we don't really offer services on clients. I just put that in there for fun, and so we could do canonical lookups and things like that. But really, the key is where are your servers or where are your resources. All right, so let's take a look at my reverse. Oops. So here is my reverse lookup, and again, really all I did was updated the records to add another name server and then more servers out there with IP addresses. If we take a look at the reverse for the lookup, it's really straightforward, very similar, except now we're just adding this pointer record for localhost. And that's it. So I am going to restart my capture, and because we're now going to be interested in DNS. So we're going to do this. Well, let's see, maybe I will save it off somewhere. Do that. And we will start another one. And this time what we're going to be interested in is DNS. All right. So let's go ahead and start our let's do our checks. So we're going to do a named check zone. And the first one we'll do our forward check. Right? So we check the domain. Whoops, check the domain, and then we check the file that goes along with it. And that looks okay. Last night I had Microsoft updates come and crashed all my VMs, and so I'm a little nervous about doing this live, but we'll see. So the reverse zone for here, 172.adr.arpa. Oh. There we go. 0. Oh, come on. There we go. Alright, so that looks okay. We could even do the reverse for my localhost if we wanted to. Whoop. So well, let's hope I spell this right. There we go. Alright, so everybody looks okay. We will bounce over to here. And we'll do our named check config, and I like to add the -z. This gives me all the zones. Alright, so everything looks okay. Alright, so I'll just show you this. We have lots and lots of destination unreachables here. We're trying to do DNS stuff, right? But and everybody knows where the DNS servers are. I updated the resolve.config and all that. So everybody's trying to hit DNS right now. But of course DNS is not running. So let's go ahead and start it up. Alright, that looks okay. And we'll go ahead and start it on the secondary. Everything looks okay. All right. So now if we take a look over here, we can see that all of a sudden my servers are communicating with each other. So we're just doing DNS, and so maybe if I said, let's do these two guys now. Okay. Hey, look at that. We're starting to communicate between our servers. So we're establishing a connection between the servers in the same way that we did with DHCP. But take a look at this special record right here. This is what we're looking for. So just like before, when we were looking at DHCP, we were looking for the communication between the servers, but also the binding updates. That told us that they were communicating about the lease. These right here, this AXFR, zone transfer, right? This is really what tells us that the two servers are actually talking to each other. Well, what's in one of these? Now maybe what I should do is we'll do a standard query message. Standard query is actually really short, or can have just a couple of these, and then we can ask for additional records. But in a zone transfer, it's a whole different animal. So let's get, this is the query for the zone transfer. Let me actually find the one that's the actual transfer. There we go. So I'm looking at the IP addresses, right? So this was a transfer. This is from .2 to .1. So that's from the secondary to the primary. And what we're after is the response from the primary. And we'll go up a little bit. Look at all of these answers. So this was the zone transfer that was queried, the original query, right? And then what this is all of the records being transferred over. Okay, and what we want, or what we might sometimes have to force, is that we want it to be for both zones. The real critical here is that this is clearly the forward zone, but we also want the reverse zone. So here is the transfer, and we've got all of the records now coming across for the reverse lookups. Okay. Well, that's terrific. So that worked. That's fabulous. That's exactly what we want to see. But now we're on the backup, and what actually happened on the backup? Well, here we are in named, and we know, I didn't look at named.conf here. So let's take a look at named.conf. All right. So here I did put in a listen, right? And same thing, no recursion or anything like that. But let's go down to the big deal, which is the zone files. Now take a look at the files here. First of all, we can say that this is a type slave. And despite the unfortunate naming convention that they use for the servers, remember that it's authoritative. The difference is that we have to point to the master here, and this is the primary server. And then we've got the file. Well, what's this file for? This is not the zone file that we're going to use for lookups. This is where we're going to store a backup. If this line was not here, I would not have a backup to recover zone files from. And then we've got this allow transfer line in here as well. Now, note the reverse zone for localhost does not need this, right? We stick that in there. But same thing for the reverse zone on the files. Okay, or for the files for the reverse zone. So what actually happened here? Well, if I look at my files, right, I was not referring to the unused file names at all, but I was referring to the slaves directory. Oops. And let's take a look and see if something's in there. And remember that I deleted these files. These are now the backup zone files that can be used for recovery. Now they're not human readable, they don't look like the zone files, but this is what we could use to actually recover their system readable. Alright, so that's what happened. That's what the zone transfer happened, and we could have just left it alone at that, and then the servers would store this information. We have a couple of places where information is stored. I'll give you an example. There we go. So we have a running collection of data that's being stored on the servers, right? All of the lookups get stored when we do or all of the transfer and the resource records get stored. The backup files that you saw are just that. We're not using those to reference anything. I could have run without those entirely. Okay, so theoretically, my servers have talked to each other. They've exchanged zone information via the zone transfer. Let's see if this works. Now, hopefully, my client here is ready to go. I can't remember. Let me take a quick look at what's in here. Okay, we do have, so name server, so generated by network manager. So this came across via DHCP. Now, we'll try a couple lookups, and when I believe that some will work, some will fail because we're missing something here, and then we'll fix that, and then we'll be done. All right. So we've got a name server. So let's try NS lookup. Okay. And just to be very clear, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say server 172.16.01. So this is the primary, and I will try something like, I don't know, dhcp1.bruce.com. So that comes back as .3. That is correct. I can also try the reverse for one of the other records. So that works on the primary. Well, let's change over to the secondary. And let's try ns1.bruce.com. Hey, that looks pretty good. And 172.16.02. And let's go ahead and try the client here. Let's see what 172.16.020 comes out to be. Well, that's client 1, and we'll try Dr. H. Oh, no. Okay. So this is what I didn't think was going to work, and that's because we're missing the search string. Now, normally on a client, you put this in there, but we can probably do this. Let me see. We'll do client1.bruce.com. Okay, that looks pretty good. So we'll exit this, and I'm going to say vi resolve.config, and I'm going to add, I'm going to say search bruce.com. Whoops, I don't think I'm root to write this, so we'll do this. We'll say sudo, like that, like that, search bruce.com, like that. That looks better. Okay, so now let's try NS lookup. Now on Windows host, a lot of times you have to add the dot at the end to make it clear, and we could actually do that here too, and we'll just try NS1. Okay, so there we go. We got the address back. Now I will show you something that's kind of fun with the Linux clients, but we'll try Dr. H again. There we go. Now I'm going to point out a couple things here, right? This client doesn't really exist right now. Clearly my IP address is this, but I don't have a client that's out there. That's just doing a lookup on the database for the name server. So sometimes we get disconnected between what's going on in the network and what the servers believe is going on in the network, right? The servers are just looking at files or resource records that they have. Okay, so let me show you something else with the capture. And we're going to change my filter again here to DNS. And let's see. Oh, let's do this. So when we do NS lookup, oops, and I did, I don't know, DHCP 3. Okay. Uh-oh. Oh, that address doesn't work. It doesn't exist. DHCP 2. Let's try that. There we go. All right, so got recursion not available. Now, let's see, probably in another video we'll talk a little bit more about this. But remember that we're not recursive servers. So that means that the servers are not willing to ask other servers about stuff. So that's what this is about. And remember that when you query servers, we have a couple of servers that are in there in resolve.config. So that's kind of what this messaging is all about. Now what I was going to show you is that every once in a while you will get, I'm not getting it here, you'll get a port unreachable even though the service is actually there. And if you get that, so I did a little sniffing around on this, I was being plagued by it for a little while. It has to do with the rate at which the server connections are closed. So if you're experiencing that, it doesn't necessarily mean that your servers are bad or broken. It just means that sometimes the connections close very quickly. Okay. But I just wanted to mention that it's really sort of an aside sort of thing. Okay, it looks like we're in good shape here. So I want to remind you a little bit about resources before we go. The DHCPD.conf man page is actually fabulous. Has a lot of discussion in there. The RFCs are fabulous, both for the failover and for DHCP main 2131. So these are fabulous resources, but that DHCPD.conf man page is really, really handy. It tells you exactly how this particular implementation of DHCPD works. The man pages for DNS files are okay, but I have found that the best resource, other than me of course, is actually the bind reference manual. So take a look at there. They go through a complete build, much more in depth than what we've been able to do in a couple of videos here, but that's a fabulous resource for you. So the bind reference manual. Of course, we've got RNDC. Oh, I forgot to do a zone transfer. Let's do that. So how would you force a zone transfer? So if you had missed this, right? If we wanted to, let's go back to DNS. If you had missed this particular record, or you wanted to see this one, what could you do? Well, I'm going to, let's go all the way down to the bottom. So we are at, let's see, 832 in DNS, right? That packet number. So let's go down here, and we're on the backup. And so what I'm going to say is RNDC retransfer, transfer bruce.com. So it's just the name of the domain. And as we take a look here, we can see that I was at 832 right in there, and there's the force of the transfer. Now I can do the exact same thing with the reverse zone. 16.172. You got to do the name of the domain. There we go. And there it is. So that's the transfer, so that's the request, and here is the update, right? Now, if you had changed the serial number, occasionally the servers talk to each other, and they look at that serial number, and if the serial number is changed, they'll do another zone transfer. So RNDC has its own man page. There's a security focus there, so I don't find that quite as useful as the bind reference manual, but there you go. So don't forget your resources and what's available to you. And that's it for our updated build. Now we've added a couple of servers for both DHCP and DNS. We've seen how the servers are communicating, and a really big question for us is, hey, why are they talking? What is the reason for these servers to talk to each other? And we can see that both of them do that, but they do it for fundamentally different reasons. Remember where your files are, remember how we tie them together, and that the backup, at least as far as DNS is concerned, does not actually keep files unless you ask it to do backups. So all of that stuff is stored in memory. So there are no zone files on your backup or secondary servers. They all exist on the primary, and everybody just references those. And the nice thing about that is that you update the files in one location, and then it pushes out to all of your backup servers. Make sure you test your clients against both of your servers, or however many servers you have out there running, and that includes the server resolvers, because servers are clients too. So don't be afraid to drop in on your primary or your secondary DNS and run NS lookup to see what happens. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hey, like and subscribe if I helped. And remember, this is networking. You can do this. And hey, may all those DNS queries reach their destinations, whether you're going to a primary or a secondary.